It's wonderful to see you all here, bright, radiant, and for this very special occasion. I'm Ron Lindon, Senior Minister here at CSA. In 1949, when he was 18 years of age, Roy Eugene Davis met his guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. In the fall of 1951, he was ordained and authorized to initiate sincere seekers in Kriya Yoga lifestyle guidelines and meditation practices. He continued to teach and serve in the tradition of Kriya Yoga masters for his remaining 68 years. His life was an inspiring example of what he taught: to live simply, focus on essentials, avoid non-essentials, and go all the way to self and God realization in this lifetime. He reminded us that death is often misunderstood. He emphasized the importance of living wisely and being prepared for our inevitable passing, to cultivate virtues and spiritual awareness while being practical, to pay our bills, make a will, to fulfill all of our life's purposes, and always to maintain a conscious relationship with the infinite. And so I'd like at this time to ask Clifford Rosen, who is the newly elected president of the CSA Board of Directors and a long time friend and supporter of Mr. Davis. He accompanied Roy to India several years ago and has been just a brother and a friend. And Clifford?
Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for being here, for making the trip. Those of you who have come long distances, from other countries, flying and driving and taking your time to be here and honor my guru, although he didn't really want to be called guru, in his humility. So as I talk about him and about Roy, I refer to him as Guruji. He was my guru. And so when I refer to him as just, Roy, which I will from time to time, I mean no disrespect, because really the way that I think of him and feel of him, is Guruji. So Kahil Gibran wrote, "For what is it to die, but to stand in the sun and melt away in the wind? And when the earth claims our limbs, then we shall truly dance." And so that's really true, if you absorb it and think about the words. That to think in terms of my friend, my mentor, my father figure, my light to be gone is just simply not accurate. He is here. I can feel him. Others have told me they can feel him. It's almost as if by the dissipation of his physical form that we've seen an expansion of that feeling, of that consciousness, of his presence, of his effervescent, omniscient, omnipresent, his presence, particularly in this hall and everywhere. When you walk about the premises, you can feel and sense, and intuitively, if you still the mind and you get behind the intellect, and you go deep, as we had a nice, beautiful, long, deep meditation, and thank you, Ron. But when you go there, you can feel him. And so I don't know if I would say Roy's dancing, but he's joyful. He's here. His energy is everywhere. And to think that by, our minds lead us to believe that this world is separate from God. And we know that's not true. We should, or we will. And to think that by the elimination of our guru's physical form, that he's not here, that his influence is gone, is wrong. Because, we use these words, I'm a immortal unit of the pure essence of ultimate reality. And they're words, but when you get behind the words and you realize and you think, what is that? What is that? Pure essence. Well, that's what he is. And that pure essence is not contained in a physical form. Can't be. So with that, we know that the shedding of his body, I had to come up with an example, is like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. And I'm not original with this. But, he really has made his transition to a higher state of being. Where the only thing lost, and this is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's, it's from something she wrote, is something he no longer needed. So Guruji put away his winter coat, and his spring has arrived. I met Guruji in 1985. I had read Autobiography of a Yogi, a little bit of history. And I was at the Unity Church with my beautiful wife, Dorian, and her parents, my in-laws, Donald and Dorothy Curtis, who opened that church, and we're at the grand opening. And I don't know why I didn't know this, but Roy was speaking, and I didn't, pay any attention before I went there to look him up and figure it out. And he spoke, and it was electrifying. He was so, it was Roy. He was so clear, so precise, so dignified, and he knew the truth. And when I tied that in and realized that he was a direct disciple, that he had been handed Kriya Yoga precisely as Yogananda had received it from Shrukteswar and so forth, and Lahiri, I was just, I was taken away. So he was my guru. So, from that time forward, I stayed with him. And he, so many of us, we meet him and, we think, I saw, Ellen describe it in her description. And she said, yes, I went to Roy. I thought he would say to me, as Roy thought Yogananda would say to him, my son, I found you. You're with me. And it was typical Roy. He's like, hi, how do you do? Yes, it was nice to meet you. And, come on up to CSA sometime. And so, of course, I came here and I stayed with him from that time forward. And I've had great results. I've had remarkable results. And that's why I'm here. That's why I realize that this knowledge and this path, and to know Kriya Yoga truly, and to practice it deeply, and to go deep, and to be disciplined, and to live a clear life, and to learn to use creative imagination, that you can have a balanced, joyful, healthy, abundant life. That's the message. That's why we're here. And that's what Roy spent his whole life in service, was to be sure that he did his best to let everybody know the good news. There was a way to do it. Practical. It's like a recipe. Just follow the directions. And that's his message. And that's our mission here. Roy was a truly unique Superman, super conscious man. And, there will never be anyone like him. There will never be anyone like Yogananda. He was Roy Eugene Davis. So this is his mission. These grounds and these premises are his gift. And his ministers and his Kriya initiates are his gift. And it really is our job, our responsibility, to allow his expanded influence, which it is, it's here, as strong as ever, stronger than ever, to take root in us. So Roy gave me the great honor of appointing me as vice president of the Board of Trustees 20 years ago with him. And I've had the joy and pleasure of being there and serving with him over that time. And I must admit, it wasn't that I had a lot to do. Roy, Guruji was in charge, of course. So it's my the board of directors again honored me by moving me up and appointing me to be president of CSA. But it really is all of us and our mission and my goal and all of our goal to keep everything going exactly as Guruji had instructed, right up to the last minute. He was, writing a meditation teacher guide, and his last note that I saw, that was very recent, in bold script in Roy's handwriting, expand globally, and then went on to explain how. And I was reflecting on that, and I realized everybody has an intuitive understanding of their life, I guess, and with his expanded consciousness, I have a sense that he knew he was telling us what to do. And so nothing stops. Everything just keeps going with more power than ever. And we're here to make that happen. And we will keep teaching and ordaining and initiating and doing everything precisely in the manner and the strict. And Guruji was strict, way that he set out. And we'll follow that and we'll do that. And that's my mission. And that's our mission. So this will continue to be a place of pilgrimage, sacred, reverent. And what we do here is hope that people come and have a time and a chance to go deep. It's not a social venue. And to truly expand their understanding. That was the gift he gave me, and that we want to give others. And our own personal duty would be to continue to practice our own Kriya Yoga and lifestyle routines deeply and in a reverent fashion. That's the way to honor Roy. That's what he wanted. So as Ron said, know that you are an immortal unit of the pure essence of all that there is, of ultimate reality. And live your life in harmony with nature. It's what I wish for you, and send you Guruji's love from the invisible beyond. And I'll just close with a little something Rabindranath Tagore wrote. And he said, "Death is not extinguishing the light. It is only putting out the lamp because dawn has come." So, peace.
Thank you, brother. It's amazing. Mr. Davis was not really big on being squishy, and so we may find a little emotional incontinence this morning, and it's okay. So he'd understand.
We try our best.
The following words of William Wordsworth are from his poem Intimations of Immortality. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life star, had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar, not in entire forgetfulness, not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home. Having come into this world from our source, we are destined to return to it. And now we respectfully acknowledge and honor our spiritual friend and teacher, Roy Eugene Davis, knowing that he continues to eternally live in that wholeness of the infinite reality we call God. Our awareness of our true nature is obvious evidence of such knowing, which spiritually enlightened people through the ages have invariably affirmed. And from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the real self, one's pure essence, is birthless, deathless, perpetual, and eternal. It does not die when the body dies. Souls come into this world, abide for a while, and return to the inner space from which they emerged. Their varied experiences do not change their essence, which is a unit of the pure essence of ultimate reality. And from the Journal of Ralph Waldo Emerson, the blazing evidence of immortality is our dissatisfaction with any other solution. The restlessness that troubles the mind when we are not yet fully conscious of our eternal relationship with the infinite is an indication of our innate urge to be spiritually awake, and is becoming increasingly influential. And from the book of Psalms, he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And the secret place is pure consciousness that clarifies our awareness, unveils our spiritual qualities, reveals our higher knowledge, and enables us to realize, that is, to experience and to know our real nature and ultimate reality. And from the writings of Paramahansa Yogananda, there is a fundamental purpose for our lives. To know it, we must understand where life comes from and where it's going. To look beyond our immediate goals to what we ultimately want to accomplish, and to consider our highest potential for development. Our ultimate purpose is accomplished when we have awakened through the stages of spiritual growth to permanent self and God realization. And realization is to have knowledge and experience of the self and of God, of this larger reality. And of course, this is what Mr. Davis told us, taught us. I started with him in 1940. I started on the planet. And way before that. I started with him in this lifetime in 1970 and had the blessing to be where he was whenever he came to California many, many times, and then here for years and years. And he's always said the same thing. The same thing. I mean, he can always, and every time he says it, it's new and fresh. Amazing. So I'd like to invite a couple of our special guests. Harold Ricekey is a CSA minister from Passau, Germany, and has been representing CSA and Mr. Davis for many, many years. Has translated some of Mr. Davis's books into German, and is a brother and friend. And Harold?
Hello, everybody. Now let us meditate longer and deeper than usual. These were the very first words from our guru to be, Roy, when we met him first in person. It happened 41 years ago in a town near Frankfurt in Germany. My wife Marlies and I had arrived belatedly at one of his very first seminars in Germany. In the following days, we would get in touch with his wonderful, charming, and humorous personality, and we felt his spiritual radiance. And interestingly, immediately we sensed a spiritual communication, and we felt and we knew that we had found our guru. I'd like to share with you three statements which are of great importance for me, which were of great importance and are of great importance, words that Roy shared with me privately. A first realization was during my first initiation into Kriya Yoga. Roy had put his hand on my forehead And then he looked straight into my eyes and said, I acknowledge you as a divine being. Nobody had said this before to me. Imagine, you all know, sometimes rude people say to you, you're foolish, you're silly, you're goofy, but they won't say you're divine. I still feel the deep impact these words had on me. And they changed my spiritual understanding that I had at that time. And they were a logical consequence of the very first words. Now I knew why I had to meditate longer and deeper than usual. And besides of that, they showed a much higher goal, a supreme goal that was to be realized. You are a divine being. And I recall, after ordination in 1989, now 30 years ago, I asked him to write something into my personal copy of the autobiography of a yogi. And he wrote, be more than human, be divine. And that was typically Roy. A short statement, now you know, do what is going to be done. I'd like to share a last statement, a last phrase, which he wrote, what proved to be his last letter about 6 weeks ago in March this year. And in this last email he wrote, at this stage in your life, surrender more and more to the ultimate good, to God who is your life. So the teaching circle closes. We have Roy's teaching in a nutshell, actually, which says, you got informed, you know the goal, now do it. Do your very best, and then let go and let God and surrender. I will keep these pearls of wisdom as a personal treasure and as a spiritual duty. And I bow deeply with great reverence and endless gratitude to our great spiritual master and beloved Guru. Om. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. And now I'd like to invite Jack Johnson, another representative of Center for Spiritual Awareness, a longtime friend and supporter of CSA and Mr. Davis, and a neighbor. He has a wonderful farm up here, very close. And Jack has been here for many, many, many years, and always a friend and a brother and great supporter of Mr. Davis. Jack?
Thank you, Ron. We have all been influenced greatly by Roy and by the consciousness that he shared with us through his presence, his understanding of ultimate reality, and his writings, of course. And as we continue to live our lives, we will continue to be influenced by that. I'd like to roll back time a little bit and share with you about 3 things that reflect on Roy's work sometime in the past. At one point, he traveled widely, giving presentations to groups, often to unity churches and other organizations. And it was during one of these out-of-town trips, one of his trips away from Lakemont, that I met him. So if you can imagine being in Lakemont, Georgia, and you're Roy, and you're going on the road. So this means packing your car with many, many books, many truth journals to be given away, many days in different cities. His first destination for this particular trip was New Orleans. It's quite a drive to New Orleans. From there, not such a long drive to Mobile, Alabama. So he could present in Mobile, spend the night, drive to Birmingham and present the same day. That's where I connected with him. And then from Birmingham, a fairly easy drive back to Lakemont. Now, just a little bit about my first meeting with him. He had about 200 people. They were eager, they were willing, and so was he. The minister said, "Our speaker requires no introduction." And I thought, wow, this is the first time I've ever met anyone who required no introduction. So he got right to the point, gave a beautiful program, book sales at the end. I lingered, approached the table. I was among the last there. And I said, "Which of your books do you recommend?" He said, "All of them. I wrote them." So I bought a book, and he said, "Come to Lakemont this summer." And I did. Well, now let's think back to what summers were like in Lakemont. We're looking at a week-long program. People would usually arrive Sunday afternoon. Roy's first session would be Monday morning, continuing straight through the week until Friday. Well, I remember a particular program. Roy was up in the chalet. He walked, came up the front steps, and he had some papers in his hand. I spoke, and he says, "I've been writing this morning." He said, "I'm writing a book." And the book he was working on was Life Surrendered in God. He said, "I write 15 pages before coming to give the 10 o'clock talk." And I thought, well, that's impressive. I haven't written 15 pages before 10 o'clock. The book is slightly over 400 pages. His comment about it being good discipline, I recalled, and I thought, well, that's a lot of discipline to write 15 pages a day when you're writing a 400-page book. And at that time, Roy was either writing a book each year, sometimes he would revise a previous book. Very, very prolific writer. So another recollection regarding Roy, sometimes he would speak a little bit about the nature of these week-long programs. He would say, people arrive on Sunday, they're tired, they've been traveling. I encourage them to rest on Monday and Tuesday. By Wednesday, they start waking up. The energy is pretty high by Thursday. Of course, that was the day for Kriya Yoga initiation. And at some point, Roy was asked about, what is it like to be the initiator doing a Kriya service? And what is so typical in his simplicity was, he said, I simply keep myself out of the way. And then whatever happens flows through me. And I thought that was a very good way to explain that process. So I'm sure most of you are Kriya initiates and have experienced that with Roy. So looking to the future, I hope that we keep his memory alive and his writings in print and make this place available for people to come as a pilgrimage site and to do their inner work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And I promise you we will. And now I'd like to invite Leotie Franklin. Leotie is a sister from California back in the early days. We started back in 1970 with Roy's representative out there, Arlie Gaines, and founded the Center for California Spiritual Inner Circle, California Inner Circle. been a long time. So Leotie has been a dear supporter, friend, and devotee of Mr. Davis for all these years, and a sister, and we really appreciate that you made the trip and are continuing. Leotie is also a member of the Center for Spiritual Awareness Board of Trustees. And so, Leotie.
Good morning, all. I know that each one of us feels so blessed to have this special connection with Roy Davis. I know he touched my heart and reached my soul. And I'm going to, rather than share some of my very deep and happy memories with Roy, I'm going to do a brief summary of Roy as I knew him. Roy Davis was dedicated to God. His whole life was dedicated to service to others, to unfold spiritually. Because of his dedication and his commitment to the truth, he expressed and demonstrated so many fine attributes and characteristics of a realized soul. His wisdom, his clarity, his self-determination, self-discipline, his generosity, his prosperity. He lived his life with joy, and not just because of his positive attitude and his wonderful sense of humor. He always joked around with us, but because it sprang from that inner unseen reality. Roy's ability to transform lives really came from his power of the word, of his inner knowledge, and his example that he set for us. He transformed my life. Roy lived his life as a man who knew that he knew. He knows God, and he would want no less for each and every one of us. He would want us to live in self-realization as we live our ordinary lives and be God-realized. And for that, I am so grateful, and I know that Roy was so much to each and every one of us, and we need to live his example. And thank you, dear Guru, Roy Eugene Davis.
So many sweet people. Thank you. And now another longtime devotee, minister, and dear friend and sister, Ellen Grace O'Brien, who many years ago was representing Roy and then founded Center for Spiritual Enlightenment in California and has a glorious ministry and ministers all around. And she's now writing books, and she just won an award, the Nautilus Award, for her newest book, and is doing amazing things. And we're really proud of you, sister.
There is a saying that the sun needs no pointing out. It is self-evident. And so it is with the life and the presence and the teachings of Guruji, of Roy Eugene Davis. It's evident that light that transformed my life and has transformed so many, and the teachings and the presence that will continue. I grew up in a family that was not religious or spiritual, very practical. But I, as a young person, had what I would call a divine discontent. which was, of course, my yearning for God. But my father, who was a good provider, but could not provide for me what I truly yearned for, used to be frustrated with me. And he would say to me, Ellen, one of these days, you'll find out about the real world. And of course, I did. And that was the great blessing of meeting my guru, Roy Eugene Davis, who introduced to me the real world, the spiritual world, and the spiritual life that is eternal life, and that is, as his guru taught him, ever new joy. He was and is an example of practical spirituality, living a God-realized life. And we have always for us his presence and his shining example. I was looking at the beautiful booklet that was put together for the service today, and in there it remarked about how he taught us to live, realized a spiritual life and a practical life, to take care of our business, including leaving a will. And I thought, yes, he did teach us that. And in accordance with divine will, he has left us all a spiritual inheritance, every single one of us. And like any inheritance, we would have to ask ourselves, well, what will I do with this inheritance, with these riches that I have received? What will I do with it? And I believe that we know what he would tell us. Ever practical, he would say, invest it. Invest it, enjoy it, appreciate it, and share it. Live your life as a God-inspired soul, as the truth of what you are, and share that truth. So we're blessed with that opportunity to have received these teachings, to have received his blessing, and to be able to be part of supporting his work into the future for all those divinely discontented souls like me who are waiting for this teaching, as I know they are. I'd like to conclude with just one of his favorite poems from his book, Mystic Reflections. In my youth, a benevolent presence surrounded and pervaded me. When I was in need, it provided for me. When I was lonely, it comforted me. When I was weak, it nurtured me. When I was empty, it filled me. When I asked what my future would be, it said, wait, and I will reveal it to you. One warm autumn day, it said, now is the time. Go forth. Do not look back. Thank you, beloved Guruji.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. Sam Sassu is scheduled to speak next, but he had a difficult time getting a visa out of Ghana. And so, but he sent a 2-minute video for us.
Namaste CSA family, deepest condolences from Africa. Mahabharata Babaji, first in our line of gurus, predicted that Kriya Yoga would spread in all lands But little did I know the role I was to play in this prediction until I met with our beloved guru, Roy Eugene Davis. In the winter of 1977, almost 42 years ago, I traveled from my home in Ghana to the CSA headquarters, Lakemont, Georgia, to study with Roy. And my intention was to move on to live in another state after my studies. But then Roy said to me, when I got there, I will ordain you and send you to Ghana. And he did indeed ordain and sent me to Ghana, and the rest is history. Thank you, Roy, for making me a blessing unto the world. Now, on his last day of his first visit to Ghana, Roy went with me to visit with my earthly father, who was then on admission in the hospital. When my earthly father saw him, he said, "Years ago, you took my son from me, but today I release him to you freely. Take him, he is now your son." And that has been how my relationship with Roy has been since then. He, as my spiritual father and my guru. Thank you, Roy. Ghana thanks you. Africa thanks you. And the world at large thanks you. Now we here at CSA have therefore decided that our new temple, which is being built, is now going to be named the Roy Eugene Davis Memorial Meditation Temple in honor of him. I thank all of you. Namaste.
Thank you, Sammy. When I moved here in 1978, Sammy was living here. He had come in 1977, and Roy initiated both of us, ordained both of us, as ministers right here in August of 1978. So he's my brother. So I'd like also now to invite Marty Ricekey to come up. And Marty is another longtime devotee, minister. He has created an amazing business in neurofeedback and neurotheology out in Santa Barbara, treats the mind and the consciousness, and has done some amazing revolutionary work in that field. And a dear supporter and friend and brother. And Marty?
Thank you, Ron. So I'm a little squishy. You know, my immediate response to that, Ron, to the work that I'm doing now is, Roy told me to do it. He told me. I was living here at CSA and taking care of the grounds and such, doing a few other odd jobs. I lived up in the greenhouse up here on the hill. If you're familiar with the grounds, in the lower room there, had a nice little kitchenette, and it was comfortable. But I remember when I lived there, I had a little trouble getting into my meditation routine. I couldn't quite be consistent as I wanted to be, because Roy said when he was doing his thing at the Phoenix Center, he would meditate 7 to 8 hours a day. I was like, well, I'm only up to 2 or 3. This is not working very well. So what happened was I realized that Roy would come driving in every morning about 3 a.m. And if I opened my door, the way that building faces the chalet, if I opened my door, I would hear his car come in. And I think he had a blue Cougar then, pretty cool car. So there, you know, I opened the door and I could hear the Cougar come in 3 a.m. And I was like, okay, great. Now I can get in sync with my guru. I'll get dressed, go down and meditate in the temple. So I started doing that. It was great. But then, and I think, Jack, you may have, where'd Jack go? You may have pinpointed something. He wrote 15 pages before 10 a.m. Well, all of a sudden, the 3 a.m. turned into 2:30, and then 2, and then 1:30, and then 1. And when we got to 1, he lost me. It's like, I can't do that. That was too much. But I was able to see and grasp the incredible dedication and motivation and inspiration that he had. And that pushed me forward into my own study, my own sadhana. But it was Roy at the ordination, Harold, I guess that we were all here, right here. And Roy put his hands on my head when he initiated me. And I'm pretty sure this is what Yukteswar said to Yogananda when Yukteswar launched Yogananda. He said, all doors will be open to you. And that was more than a prophecy. It's proven to be absolutely true. And as Ron said, my work now is, I'm sort of this subtle, subversive Kriya Yogi. I'm trying to bring yoga science into Western and medical science. That's what we're doing. And as we go further and deeper into that, people aren't scared of yoga and meditation anymore. So now we're able to give out Roy's books. We're able to give out the old truth journals. We're able to say, look, this is about self-realization. And it's working very well. So I can't echo or repeat as eloquently and as profoundly what you all have said. So I'm going to leave it at that. The only thing I wanted to say to end here is I've been reading the Holy Science again because there's a Sutra 14 in Yukteswar's Holy Science. And I'll paraphrase it. Yukteswar says, when the devotee meets that divine personage, his or her Satguru, then the devotee is naturally directed inwardly to the Sushumna, and there meets himself. So thank you, everybody. Love you all.
Thank you, Marty. You haven't seen Squishy yet. So 49 years ago, I met Roy Eugene Davis, and my life was forever changed. Following his guidance has led me on the adventure of a lifetime. Wondrous, intense, fulfilling, and transformative. He taught me through his personal example. He was gentle, unassuming, and humble, but always direct and insightful. He had a delightful sense of humor, but was unwavering in his grounded revelation of truth principles. He taught me through stories about himself and others. In the early days, when I'd make an appointment to see him with my list of very important questions, he would offer me tea. And then he'd talk about publishing and some people that he had known, and a church or some minister and their approach to ministering, and some of his own personal experiences. He would never just tell me what to do. But still, I always came away with a sense of how to proceed. In the years working very closely with Mr. Davis every day, I found that being in his presence had a powerful transformative effect on every aspect of my life. The old non-useful fell away and was replaced by a greater sense of purpose and clear intention. CSA and the ministry was his life, his whole life. He lived to serve. He was impeccable in his teaching, careful to define the words that he used so his ideas would be transmitted clearly and effectively. He oversaw every detail of the production of his books and magazines, the accommodations in the guest houses, the direct decorations and furnishings in this hall, meals for the guests, grounds maintenance, everything an extension of himself, all part of his ministry, everything. One could not separate the man from his actions, his surroundings, all supported his ministry mission. He demonstrated a life lived on purpose. He came each day armed with several notes outlining what he was to accomplish on that day. And then he would engage in each project with laser-like focus. He had an uncanny ability to see exactly what needed to be done and the best way to do it. He personally wrote, designed, edited, and oversaw the layout of every book and magazine that we published. Everything. And there's a picture in the little book here, he even stuffed the truth journals to put them out for the mailing. So I would arrive at 5:30 every morning, and he would already be there in his office working. His work was his life. Even when he traveled to foreign countries, Italy and India and Germany, he would teach, but he preferred to be up on a plane home the next morning. It wasn't much for tourism or wasting time. He wanted to get back to work. He even said, Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving are kind of, they get in the way of my life. Well, we just have to show up and do our work. Now, with his passing, we have an opportunity to rededicate our lives, to follow his example, to do what is useful and to avoid that which is not useful. He said, life is short. Focus on important matters while you can do so. And he often repeated the last thing that Yogananda told him. Pay no attention to what others do or don't do. Don't look to the left. Don't look to the right. Look straight ahead to the goal and go all the way. And you can do it. And you can do it. So let's take just another moment now to turn within and honor and acknowledge Mr. Davis, Roy, our beloved teacher and guru, and his presence. As we let go of our sense of individuality, as we open our minds and our hearts and our awareness, we find that we have no limitation, that we're not bounded by our physical body, by the space we occupy. We can feel all of our brothers and sisters here together, and we're all one in consciousness, and we can feel Mr. Davis's presence. This is an expression of him that we are abiding within. And to assimilate is to take within. As we eat food, we take it within. And to metabolize is to make it part of ourself. And so we have assimilated his teaching, metabolized it. It has become part of us. And so he lives within us, each one of us, every day. So please acknowledge with me that Roy has awakened to the ultimate extent of spiritual growth, supported by our prayers and goodwill and nurtured by God's grace. May peace and understanding fill our hearts as we free Roy to his highest good. And if you will read in your little booklet and respond along with me, let us say to him, Roy, we behold your divine nature. We see you in the wholeness of God. Our love, goodwill, and God's redemptive grace are constantly with you. Amen.